Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'm Juwita and I want to tell you my topic about animals and learning language as a final exam from Psycholinguistics Course. Gov 1761 said earlier that language is a systematic means of communicating idea or feeling by the use of conventionalist signs, sounds, gestures, or marks having understood meanings. That brief four-month project ended in tragedy when the animal died with a high fever while repeating the two words it had learned to say, Papa and Cup. Later, more comprehensive scientific attempts to teach speech to animals were made with chimpanzees. Gua, the chimpanzee with a human siblings, Winthrop and Lula Clutch raised a female chimp named Gua along with their own son Donald. Teaching spoken English to apes, the first scientific attempt with an orangutan. The earliest known scientific attempt at teaching language to an ape was that of Furness 1916 in the US, who attempted to teach an orangutan to speak. The brief 4-month project ended in tragedy when the animal died with a high fever while repeating the two words it had learned to say, Papa and Cup. Later, more comprehensive scientific attempts to teach speech to animals were made with chimpanzees. These were conducted by psychologists in the 1920s through the 1940s by two separate husband and wife teams. The college 1933 or 1968 and the Hayes 1951. Gua was raised in an ordinary speech environment with no specific language training being given. The college wanted to see if Gua could learn language as ordinary human children do, where language training is not given. Vicky, another chimp raised in a human household, unlike Gua. So Vicky was given special speech training in pronunciation. However, despite the highest efforts in which they helped Vicky to make the shapes of sounds with her mouth, after 3 years, Vicky had only learned to utter 4 words: Mama, Papa, Up, and Cup. And these were so poorly pronounced that the world had to understand. Teaching sign language to the chimpanzee, gorilla, and orangutan. Washoe, the first singing chimp. The reason that any attempt to teach chimps to speak was doomed to failure because of the simple fact the chimps do not possess the necessary vocal apparatus for human speech. Since chimps are very adept at using their hands, the gardeners conceived of the idea of teaching them a simplified form of American Sign Language. The gardeners give the impression that the language of the singing apes and of the singing child are very similar. In contrast, by the end of 4, ordinary children have learned over 1,000 words and they can comprehend and produce sentences on the basis of an abstract syntax that includes negation, question, etc. Hearing impaired children who have learned ESL from infancy also acquire a similarly high level of language knowledge. Yet, despite the many years of training and exposure to sign language that Washoe experienced, she could not advance beyond an elementary level of human achievement. Teaching sign language to the reasons that any attempt to teach chimps to speak was doomed to failure because of the simple fact that chimps do not possess the necessary vocal apparatus for human speech. Since chimps are very adept at using their hand, the gardeners conceived of the idea of teaching them a simple form of American Sign Language. The gardeners give the impression that the language of the Sinin apes and that of the Sinin chill are very similar. In contrast, by the age of 4 or 40, ordinary children have learned over 1,000 words and they can comprehend and produce sentences on the basis of an abstract syntax that includes negation, question, etc. Hearing impaired children who have learned ESL from infancy also acquire a similarly high level of language knowledge. Yet, despite the many years of training and exposure to science language that Washu experienced, she could not advance beyond an elementary level of human achievement. Teaching science language to the reasons that any attempt to teach chimps to speak was doomed to failure because of the simple fact that chimps do not possess the necessary vocal apparatus for human speech. Since chimps are very adept at using their hands, the gardeners conceived of the idea of teaching them a simple form of American Sign Language. Yet, despite the many years of training and exposure to sign language that she experienced, she could not advance beyond an elementary level of human achievement. The optimism of animal language research in the 1960s turned sour in the 1970s when a psychologist who was an early of chimps being about to learn sign language worked with a chimp that he named Chimsky. By giving the chimp this name, Trudge evidently set out to make a monkey out of Noam Chomsky by proving that animals can learn language. Teaching sign language to Coco, the gorilla Coco, born in 1971, whom she has trained in American Sign Language. Unlike Washu, Coco received speech input from her unlike Washu. Coco received speech input from her trainers as well as signs. Teaching sign language to Cantik, the orangutan. In the late 1970s, Smile 1983, 1990 start to teach American Sign Language to a male orangutan named Cantik, which in Malaysian means beautiful. An orangutan was chosen for this research because they generally score higher or cognitive tests than do gorilla or chimpanzee. Cantik was not just trained to use signs, but was immersed in a human cultural environment to learn to appropriate ways for behavior and interaction. After 7 years of interaction with his Cantik learned to use a vocabulary of 140 signs that signify objects, action, proper names, attributes, locative, and pronouns. Overall, Cantik acquired vocabulary items but like the other apes, little syntax. Teaching artificial language to chimpanzee. Lana, the computer chimps. Lana, the computer chimps. The Rampage 1977, Savage Rampage, and 1978. Another husband and wife team thought the chimp Lana is a simple artificial language called Yerkes. The Rampage taught the chimp Lana a simple artificial language called Yerkes. Lana was named after the research program, which was called the Language Knowledge Project. Once she even asked the trainer to leave the room after he had purposely mixed up on one of her sentences to test her action. However, Lana did not create sentences according to the rule, but learned them by rote in a way similar to memorizing important full sentences in a foreign language, such as "Where is the toilet?" More learning will be necessary for Lana to be able to create novel sentences. So Savage Rambert herself believed that apes have but a limited ability for language acquisition. Sarah, the magnetic plastic token chimp, an ingenious piece of research was one conceived by David Fremont of the University of Pennsylvania involving a chimp by the name of Sarah. Rather than using sign language or electronic keyboards, Fremont gave Sarah 130 plastic tokens with magnets so that they could be manipulated easily by her and others. Sarah was questioned banana read, to which she would correctly answer no by means of a token. The tokens will adhere to a metallic board. Fremant's research with Sarah makes it very clear that chimps are intelligent creatures. She was easily able to use her plastic tokens to request items that were not present, such as asking for fruit, etc. Fremont himself has taken the view that little more syntax than this can be learned by apes. Kenzie, a PitchMy chimp produced synthesized speech. No attempt was made to teach language. Rather, in the way that children learn language, the bonobos were exposed to language during normal interaction. Ryan File and Savage Rambert said that Tiny Kenzie, when around 50 years old, learned over a period of 5 months to use grammar equivalent so to that of a 2 years old human child and had a vocabulary of about 250 words. It cannot be concluded that Kenzie has demonstrated any greater acquisition of language than the apes in other language studies. Teaching language to dolphins. However, the wisdom dolphins, there is much anecdotal lore about the intelligence of dolphins and whales. In one of the first studies, Lily tried to teach a dolphin to forge through its blowhole in such a way that it will allow the dolphin to imitate human speech sounds. A young male dolphin named Alvar produced approximations of the wall squares. To teach him to pronounce, Alvar interchanged human sounds, dolphin sounds, as if he were attempting to translate, but Lily provided no scientific substantiation in this regard. Akai Kamai and phonics, learning artificial language through sights and sounds. In his investigation of the dolphin's language comprehension, Herman and his associates conducted experiments using two different types of artificial language, one involving sounds, the other involving visual gesture. The sounds-based language has its sounds projects underwater into the dolphin's tanks. The visual language or gesture invented by Herman and his colleagues involved the use of the trainer arms and hands. The recent appreciations of a language study with a dog has led us to wonder why household pets have not been brought to the university for language interaction more often. So the research with animals clearly showed that animals have only a rudimentary language ability. What is puzzling and requires explanation is why their language ability is so low when their overall intellectual ability is so much higher. Apes habits, for example, intelligent complex behavior regarding social organization, food acquisition, and problem solving. Human in the acquisition of language. For intelligence theories like Putzman and others, including ourselves, hold that animals lack certain aspects of intelligence that are needed for the learning of such as complex ability as language. In nuts like Chomsky, on the other hand, argue that the effect is due to animals being born without a special language ability, an ability that is little related to intelligence. Chomsky has offered a very telling argument against research who teach language to animals. It would be rather odd to think that an animal will have developed through evolution the highly complex capacity for language, but will not have used that capacity until humans from universities came along to show them how. Whether animals like intelligence as the empiricists say or lack a special language ability as the rationals say, it seems evident that animals do not have much of a capacity for a grammar-based language. I think that's all for me. Thanks for watching. Thank you. See you.